So once that's already done, we can start beginning our new project. So we're going to give it a name. So we'll call this TileMill class tutorial. Other than that, you can put your name and description, but this is all you have to do. For the image format, just leave it at PNG 24-bit. And it should show up right here. So already we see that it does give us a base map. And before we get into this, we should kind of get familiar with the interface itself. So as we've seen before, we have our editor, which brings us to the specific project, our projects page, our manual. So this will give you a little help in how to set up your file, do the editing, and exporting it out. There are plugins now, so this is new to TileMill. I haven't really looked at them, but if you want to take a look, I'm sure it could be quite useful. But for these purposes, for the project itself, the important things are you have your hand icon, which goes to your interactivity. So we'll look at this later. Fonts, so it already has its own embedded font library where you can just go through and copy and paste this stuff out. Carto CSS documentation once again. So for example, in styling, polygons, lines, markers, anything you want to do or anything that's you'll be able to do is documented in this, as well as reflected within the previous default program. So it's good to reference that, as well as your layer. So right now we already have a layer which is our countries, and then the background represented as water, which is in our style sheet. So for the layers, we have features which will give us all this information, similar to QGIS, where you can look at the attributes, and you'll notice that the things highlighted in green are recognized as numbers. And the real nice thing about TileMill too is that it already gives domain. So in setting up Chloroplast like that, you only have to reference this. But within these layers, for example, if I want to turn off the countries, all I have to do is just hit that I button, save, and no longer be there. On the right-hand side is your CSS editor. So this is what CSS looks like. The syntax is a little bit different than what we're used to, but it actually is quite intuitive. It just takes a little bit of getting used to as far as semantics and the commands, but everything is within here that you can use, and once again, referencing previous projects will get you into it quite quickly. One thing that's important to note, if you guys haven't had any experience with web design, CSS uses web colors. So for example, to define this background color, which is this light blue, it's using this weird hexadecimal code. In order to get those, it's useful to just go into Photoshop, and you can select any color you want, and it will have your web colors right here. So if I want to change the ocean to a nice light purple, just copy it and paste it over, save, and there you go. Already, we're starting to see a few of the identifiers for the visualization of polygons, which is our country. So we have our line color, which is blue right now. If we want to change it or get rid of it, all you have to do is delete it out. Oh, actually no, that'll just change it to the default black. I believe if we want to blend it in with our polygon, just change it to 6Fs, which is the web version of white. 6 zeros is the web version of black. Our line width, so it's pretty straightforward, the join, and then the actual fill. So already it's pretty straightforward in how to do this. So first, this is kind of a nice map and getting justified with where our project is, but for our purposes, we have all this information that we want to include on here. So and also with containing the region of which our visualization is taking place. So when we end up exporting this out, if we exported a map that contained this entire region, it would be an insanely large file. So it helps to get that area of interest right away. And a good way of defining that is by using our shapefiles that we took from QGIS. So the first thing we want to do now is start importing these base files. So you go to add these layers. It's simple as just adding layer. You go to your data source, and this is kind of the one downfall of TileMill, is that it uses this really annoying configuration. So just go into here, and the first thing I'm going to want to import is our, the ocean boundary. So done, and then you want to put your SRS to WGS84, and then you save and style. So already we see that it's clashing with our default countries boundaries, so we can just turn that off for now. And it's kind of weird how our, instead of using it, the background is the ocean, we can simply just use it as our outline of the geometry. So we're just going to copy white up into that. And for the ocean, obviously that's not what the ocean looks like, so I'm going to copy this color over. Let's see, polygon fill. And then for the line width, do the exact same thing unless you want that denoted boundary, and then you can also mess with the thickness of this line. We'll leave that just 0.1 for now. All right, so the first thing, next layer of information we're going to want to add are our roads, which once again going through this process. Set our SRS to WGS84. And now we have an abundance of this information, but unfortunately this is not workable. Similar to the way that when you open things in QGIS, it has a default styling, the same is for TileMill, and so this is kind of difficult to visualize. So of course everybody has their own workflow, but the way I typically like to use TileMill is everything usually will be imported on the same style sheet, but for me I find it useful to separate style sheets into separate layers. So here we have our road, and you simply just copy it out and save it. So first thing, of course, we want to do is change the line width to have a better sense of what it looks like. Change our line color to black. And with any good map, if you look on Google Maps or anything else, there's always a hierarchy to the line weights. And within TileMill, it's actually quite easy to do that. So first thing you want to do is look at your attributes. So within the shapefile, it's nicely enough has all these things pretty well defined. So for example, we're going to want to use primary roads, trunk roads, and motorway links as like our kind of larger, our thicker lines to define the connections between cities, and then our like tertiary service is something smaller to give definition to the city. So setting this up, first we want to create our base width, which I think 0.1 works kind of well. So as a map, this is pretty legible. You might want to go a little bit more in depth in this. But zooming in, everything kind of gets uniform and the same. That's not something we necessarily want. An important thing to look at is your zoom level. So right now we're at zoom 12, zoom 11, and zoom 13. In each of these, it's going to visualize at a different rate. So we're going to get more into that later on. But for now, in setting up a visual hierarchy, we're going to want to separate out our different road types. So this is as simple as just writing type equals, and we know one of the ones that we want to identify, looking at our attributes table, is primary. So just copy this, and similar to Python, if it's a string, you have to put in quotations. Then the next is a curly Q, so line width, as we've already seen. And then we'll make this 0.2, and then close curly Q. So going back, I'll change this to 0.3 just so it really shows. You save it out. We can already see that these guys have much more definition. We want to go a little bit further in this and start outlining a little closer. That's a good width. We want to pick out some more types. So for the trunk roads, it's the exact same. Yep, you have it. Oh, shoot. I don't think you can actually do that in this. I don't think, yeah, unfortunately, I don't think there's a
different resolution.
Yeah, I can try that. One sec. Just copy this over and then select out your other road systems that you want to have well defined. So roads, we already know, trunks, and motorway links.
Does this syntax look familiar? It's a different language, but it's very similar syntax to Python. So a lot of the notation should look familiar. For instance, the square brackets, those are functions, okay? So this is a kind of condensed function form for CSS, because what you're doing is a conditional. Just like we use the square brackets to do compressed functions in Python, it's the same exact thing. You're saying if type equals trunk, then. So it's just the same exact thing. And then the curly braces, those are dictionaries, right? So you're identifying a property, a key with a value pair. Okay, so it's a little bit different, but it should start to kind of make sense too. And then the quotes for strings and all that, it's all consistent.
Yep. Last thing I'll show, there's also different line types that you can use in TileMill. So if you want to get fancy and say you want your motorway link widths to be dashed, all you have to do, it's within this documentation, so line dash array, and the syntax is once again pretty straightforward. Just typing out line dash array, then it should be 3,6, so your spacing and your length and gap, and then just separate it with another comma. And, whoops, sorry, error here. Oh, sorry, semicolon. Might be too faint, but it should have worked. Either way, yeah, all the stylizing and functionality you want should be in here. So next up, we're going to want to start looking at points. Now that we have this base map, we can start getting a sense of our geography and putting context to this data that we've created. So